All right, welcome everyone to South Bay Progressive Alliance's quarterly community meeting. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm going to give it just a moment for people to get logged in here, and we're going to pass it off to Nietzsche to introduce us to our event this evening.
Hello, and I would like to welcome everyone here joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us and welcome. Just a quick FYI, this virtual meeting is going to be recorded so that we can post it online for later viewing to a wider audience. First, I would like to point out there will be a question and answer chat box where you can type your questions as various guest speakers and topics arise during our virtual meeting here tonight. Next, I would like to go over really quickly, what does SBPA stand for? SBPA stands for the South Bay Progressive Alliance. And what do we represent? We are a diverse and inclusive coalition of individuals, communities, and organizations. And we are the change we need. We work to elect corporate-free candidates, to enact progressive policies, and to build institutions and a society that are based on democracy, equity, cooperation, compassion, and sustainability. And our core values are, next slide, promoting democracy by keeping government free of corporate influences, strengthening the public sector in our basic human needs, such as housing, healthcare, and education, supporting gender, racial, and LGBTQ+ equity, as well as immigrant rights and true criminal justice system reform, promoting well-paying, sustainable jobs and worker cooperatives, and promoting environmentally sound policies, clean air and water, public transportation, and public utilities. Wrapping up, I invite you all to follow the SBPA on social media like Facebook and Twitter. And with that, I would like to add a thank you to everyone involved in making tonight's virtual meeting happen. Thank you to our guest speakers and to a special welcome to all new people visiting our SBPA virtual space here tonight. And now I turn our meeting back over to Nick.
Right, thank you so much, Nietzsche. So a quick breakdown of our agenda for this evening. We'll be getting right into a discussion with the California candidate for Assembly District 25, Alex Lee. And after that, we'll be talking with Jake Tonkel, one of our local city council candidates for San Jose's District 6. We are gonna have a call to action here from one of our campaigns. And then we're gonna have an education discussion, the few candidates running for office, as well as some education related issues. And then we've got a wonderful poetry reading by Santa Clara County's own poet laureate, Janice Lobosapigao. And then finally, we'll be wrapping up with a roundtable discussion that's going to include Chesa Boudin, the district attorney for San Francisco, and Sajid Khan, who is a public defender here in the Santa Clara County, San Jose area, and then Raj Jayadev, who is one of the co-founders of Silicon Valley Debug. So looking forward to all of these wonderful discussions, and please remember to post any comments or questions in the Q&A, and we will get to those. So one last thing, we always want to recognize and acknowledge all of our allies, collaborators, and co-conspirators. You know, we have SBPA, as Nietzsche has already introduced, but we also have Silicon Valley Debug, who has been a longtime ally, doing a lot of great work here in the San Jose and Santa Clara County area. One of our newest friends and allies here, we have San Jose Strong. We'll be hearing more from them later this evening. Our Revolution is another ally of ours, and our statewide organization is California Progressive Alliance. And then we also have Silicon Valley's DSA. So this is all about coming together. We are building a movement together. So this is our platform, and this is for us to come together network, organize, plan, and achieve our goals. So thank you very much. With this, I'm going to pass it over to Jessica to introduce our first speaker.
All right. Hello, everyone. So my name is Jessica Matthew. I am on the steering committee of South Bay Progressive Alliance, and I'm also on the steering committee of Silicon Valley DSA. Both of these organizations have endorsed Alex, by the way, plus many others. So just a little bit about Alex before we get started, for those who don't know. So he is running in Assembly District 25. And in his race, he actually had 7 Democratic challengers and was outspent 15-1. And he managed to beat them all. And he's the only Democrat left standing in his race. So when he wins, he will be the youngest API legislator and the first openly bisexual legislator in California history. And he is also running a corporate-free and cop money-free campaign, which is great. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So I guess first question for Alex. So being a corporate-free candidate is awesome, but obviously we want every candidate to be that. So tell us a little bit about why you chose to run your campaign that way and what you plan to do about getting corporate money out of politics when you are elected.
Well, that is an excellent question, Jessica, so thank you for that. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight and share with you all my vision of why I want to be, or why I keep maintaining being a corporate-free candidate, despite, perhaps, despite there being a lot of pressure to do so and conform to the norm of taking cop money and corporate money. And why it's important to me personally of why from day one we decided not to take any corporate money is because as one of the 3 assembly members who will represent Silicon Valley, there is an outsized influence in the big multi-billion-dollar global corporations here in Silicon Valley. It is my interest to be representing the workers and families of the Silicon Valley, not the corporate interests. And so by making that very clear to the corporations, I don't take any money at all. Even if we're on the same side, I hope it's because of the empirical evidence proves so. So we will be on the same side, but it's not because of any lobbyist or campaign contribution influence to do so. I'm also proud to say that, as we get closer to the November election and there are more and more local candidates running, I have repeatedly said that my policy is that I only endorse other corporate-free candidates because I adhere to that standard. So I believe that, by putting that kind of positive pressure on folks, whether they be running for state or local offices, we can keep building that movement out so that people are accountable directly to their constituents and not to the multi-million-dollar corporations.
Awesome. Amazing. Oh, and by the way, for everyone, we might have like a minute or 2 at the end for a question from the audience. So if you have a question, please go ahead and put that in the chat. Second question I have for you. So the theme of this event tonight is Reimagining Thriving Communities. So I wanted to know some ideas you had for how we could build more equitable, but also more sustainable communities.
That's right. A big centerpiece of my campaign, even since the primary, has been about building sustainable communities, sustainable and affordable communities. And what that looks like is upending the current status quo. The current status quo, what we have now, is the profit-seeking private developers. They hold all the cards when it comes to building housing and, a lot of other transportation and even public infrastructure projects. The private market holds all the cards. And this is especially true in the city of San Jose, the biggest city in my district. We need to upend that dynamic entirely. And how we're going to do that is I have a plan for going forward and making and resurrecting public social housing in the state and in this country so that the development of homes is to get people housed and not for profit. Right now, what we have are developers who build on our lands and develop land for the profit margins. It's not necessarily to get people housed or to build towards our climate goals or to build green space for everyone. It is so that they can make, at the end of the day, max amount of profit back. That is not how we were going to do things. But when I get to the state assembly, I'm going to be authoring a constitutional amendment to repeal Article 34, which was a racist leftover from when folks really feared low-income housing. And as President Donald Trump recently has very clearly illustrated the connection between racism and keeping low-income folks out of your neighborhood, Article 34 is a remnant of that from the good old days, the 60s and 50s, when people feared low-income neighbors. We're going to start by repealing that so that we can build low-income housing and income housing for all people in every neighborhood. And we're also going to upend this dynamic by having public social housing being the main proprietor and source of creating affordable housing. It will be in direct competition using capitalist forces against themselves, against private developers. So when they have to compete against a public developer, which is only seeking to maximize good and bringing down the market rate as much as possible, they will have to respond in kind, because they cannot constantly escalate their prices as we are currently seeing in the current private environment. But with the public housing, we can really achieve that. And I believe that we can accomplish this within the next 10 years.
Amazing. And then I have a third question here. And then again, if we have another minute, I'll take a question from the audience. So it's no secret that you were arrested at one of the Black Lives Matter protests. You made news about that in June. And you've been quite vocal about your interest in finding ways to defund the police. So I wanted to know, what does defunding the police look like to you? And how do you think that that will play a role in making communities better and thrive?
Right, that's correct. Yes, it's no secret that when San Jose, like many other cities, rushed to do unconstitutional curfew laws, I was one of the people that was booked for breaking curfew, and I still have to deal with the court date during the day that I think ballots drop in October. So something to worry about still. But I think defunding the police right now is an integral conversation. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have in a lot of our communities, because I think it presents itself as a radical idea. But it's less radical when you think about how we've constantly poured our taxpayer dollars into a militarized police force that is currently still terrorizing innocent people on the streets of every American city, while our own tax dollars have been deprioritized and disinvested out of our education system, our healthcare system, and our housing, our public housing stock too. Affordable housing stock, I should say. It's something that I even still have a bit of kerfuffles with neighbors in my community, because I think it presents itself on face value as something radical. But when you really look at the numbers and see where the outcomes are, we are really spending more and more money for less and less outcomes. In the end of the day, it's easy to tell people, or it should be easy to realize this, that police do not prevent crime, they're responding to crime. Crime itself manifests itself out of socioeconomic problems, deeper problems which we are failing to address. And by relying on a violent force that has weapons of war on our very streets, we are definitely not going to solve the problem, in fact, make it worse. So in the state assembly, I plan to introduce legislation to ban the weapons of war that are on our street, whether it be tear gas, armored vehicles, grenade launchers of all that sorts. We need to first be de-escalating the situation, because right now, as we have it, we have some folks who wear these uniforms who are too eager to use these equipment, right? Because it becomes a sunk cost mentality. If I've spent all this money on all these weapons already, why not use them? And it's always a good point, and I would always make this point to people, and you can use this too, is that the taxpayer double dips too, because first the Department of Defense, we buy it from private contractors, the armored vehicles, all the weapons. Then the Department of Defense turns around and says, hey, we've got too many tanks now. Do you want to buy some from us, San Jose PD? And then we, again, buy it from the Department of Defense. So it's double dipping your taxpayer dollars. So we need to make sure that we're working on two things in state legislature: demilitarizing our police to make them less violent, and then at the same time, repealing laws that protect bad actors or bad apples that are constantly popping up all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering my questions. But we have, I think, a minute or two left. So let's just ask, this is kind of a speed round question, I guess. One of the audience members, Nicholas, asked, what is your position on ethnic studies requirements in the California public school system? And do you support AB 1460 and AB 3310?
I'm not familiar with the exact ABs. I'm very bad with the numbers, but I do support ethnic studies requirements at the college level, as well as the K-12 level, at the high school level as well. It's very important that we have an inclusive approach to our history and understanding of how California became the way it became, and that we have been stolen, the state that we live in has been stolen twice. First by Spanish conquistadors, and secondly by the US military. So it's very important to know that where all our diverse communities come from. So I do support them. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact bills off the top of my head, but I support the requirements.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Alex. I think that brings us to the end of our section.
All right. Thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you, Alex, as well. It's so refreshing to hear wonderful candidates and politicians like yourself speaking, such truths about decommodifying housing and such important issues around, better uses of our community's funds for defunding the police and such. So thank you so much. So up next, we have our local candidate here, Jake Tonkel. Jake is running for San Jose's District 6. And Jake, are you with us?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. How is campaigning going, Jake?
COVID campaign life is a little different. I'm sure, just like everything, COVID has affected the way we communicate with people, the way we interact with friends, family, colleagues. This is no different, but we're having a lot of fun and getting to be a lot more creative, which I think is one of the benefits that me and my team are feeling.
Okay. Oh, great. Oh, great. What, as far as your campaign, what was kind of your motivation for putting yourself out there, campaigning, and what defines your campaign in comparison to the incumbent?
District 6, for those of you that don't know, your central west part of San Jose covers Willow Glen, Rose Garden, the Alameda, and that's traditionally how people think of this. It's in some political structures a power center for city politics in terms of money and wealth. And right off the bat, just like Alex, I knew being a corporate-free candidate, not taking money from developers, which have a huge lobby at the city of San Jose, was going to be important and new for kind of this wealthy power structure district. I also just knew how diverse it really was. We're talking about the Bascom corridor, we're talking about Midtown, we're talking about Sunol, we're talking about Sherman Oaks neighborhood. There are there's a vast discrepancy between what everybody thinks District 6 is and what District 6 really is and what its needs are. We've spent the last couple of cycles with a representative that has no intention of representing renters in any way, shape, or form. And we're a district that in the 2010 census was 50% renter. It's really shaped the way the campaigns come about because we are talking about how we build affordable housing, just like Alex mentioned, without this profit motive that comes from, again, a lobby that will spend hundreds of millions of dollars on local races. That battle has really shaped the way that things have played out over the last year now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like Alex was mentioning around being arrested for the curfews, I believe it was your opponent that was the sole vote to not end the curfews. And
we've had some votes that I think just really do not represent the social values we hold at the city of San Jose. In California, we are focused on inclusivity and making sure that we're on the forefront of social justice as a city. That's not happening. I mean, we're also looking at the city of San Jose as one of the few major cities that has really made almost no commitment to change following Black Lives Matter movement. And my opponent's certainly been on the wrong side of those votes.
Yeah, it was frustrating to hear all the comments made, the hundreds of phone calls that came in for defunding the police, and then the long city council meetings that went on, and then no change coming out of it. It was...
Absolutely. And then we saw the same thing, almost a week and 2-3 weeks later with the strong mayor proposal. People came out over and over to say it was a rush deal. It had, some nuances that were not brought into the public eye. And again, for those of you that aren't aware, we have a 6-5 divide across City Hall, 5 progressives and 6 conservatives.
Mhm.
That means it doesn't matter, what progressive values say in the city of San Jose, there's enough votes to make anything happen. And that's exactly the way the strong mayor went as well, where 6 votes said, you know what, we're going to put this complex, convoluted ballot measure on in November, regardless of what public comment was asking, which wasn't a no, don't put it on. It was make sure that the community has input and we can put it on, in a time that's important after the discussion is had. And we saw, again, my opponent just had no reason to reach out to the community because she knew exactly where that vote was going to fall. And that's really what we're up against, is the difference between reaching out to voices that are not traditionally represented, trying to get a diverse view and perspective to be able to learn as an elected representative and then make an informed vote. And that's a really big piece of what needs to change at City Hall.
Absolutely. So if people want to get involved, we have some things listed right here. Lit drops and phone banking. Is there other asks you can have or ways people can get involved with your campaign?
I have been super excited by our post March growth. We're up to over 250 volunteers signed up. Our core team is upwards of like 50 people, creating graphics, reaching out to community members, scheduling events. It's been really amazing to see. So we do have opportunities for any skill set. People that are interested in photography, in art, there's a place. But at the end of the day, we're also really asking people to make some of these simple actions that'll get us over the top. We will be outspent. There's no question about it when you don't take money from corporations or developers in the city of San Jose. You have to have volunteer power, people power is the way you get things done. My opponent just today had decided that she is not going to lit drop at all or knock on doors because she thinks it's unsafe. And in reality, you have to have volunteers, people that love your campaign. You can't just have money to be able to go drop lit, to be able to, phone bank and reach the community. And so for anybody that can join and help us out, we've got a hill to climb, but we're absolutely going to shift the tide of San Jose City Council come November. So sign up, jakeford6.com and go to the volunteer link. It makes a huge difference.
This Saturday, 11 a.m. and 1, we have lit drops, and you can find out those details on your website. And also phone banking is another very important thing as well. So I cannot see the Q&As while I'm sharing my screen, so I don't think there are any questions.
We've got...
Actually, there are.
Okay, if someone could ask those, because I can't access them.
Jake, can you see those questions on your phone?
I can, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So first question, Rhonda asks, growing a sustainable city requires a healthy tree canopy for all. Trees are needed in San Jose areas with the worst air pollution, East San Jose, downtown, but funding continues to decrease and illegal removal of trees has been more and more prevalent. How would you help us have a healthier city? First, hi Rhonda. Great question, because it was one of the stark divides that I noticed walking and knocking on as many doors in Willow Glen, in Rose Garden, in Bascom, throughout the district. You can tell where your low income communities are because you lose tree canopy. It just disappears, becomes, blacktop effect. They're hotter, it's harder to breathe, air pollution's worse. We have to look at the benefits to the community, just the social, health benefits to it. And then the city has to say that has a huge economic benefit for us. When healthcare costs go down, when productivity goes up, when students can perform better at school over the next 5, 10, 15 years, making sure that we have urban forests, good walkability, healthy tree canopies, really important. I think it's a big piece we miss from climate smart San Jose, that we have to start being proactive and funding. We do also have to get more strict about what happens when people remove trees. I mean, right now I might have it wrong, but it's at least a 1-to-1. You take a tree down, you have to put a new tree back up. I think it's 3-to-1. But those are small trees. Not all of them make it. They're not necessarily native as well. So we have to start to make those tweaks to our policy in order to bring back what's going on. I know we got a lot of work to do still, but excited to push that forward. And then we have a second question from Nick Barron. What's your position on Costa-Hawkins? What do you want to do to promote rent control at the city level in the face of a conservative city council? I'll start at the end. In theory, when we win, it will not be a conservative city council. But rent control departments, whether it's weakening the Ellis Act, we continue to lose rent controlled units year after year from Costa-Hawkins as rent control units get taken down or pulled off for private use. We have to start to be stricter. I mean, we are also in a space where we cannot rely on rent control to make up for how unaffordable the city of San Jose is, right? Rent control means if someone new comes in, you start at market value. It just holds how much you can raise rent year after year. And so looking at cooperative owned housing, community land trusts, public housing as a mixture, as well as improving our on-site affordability requirements, are pieces that need to come together. It was Prop 10 in 2018 that would have repealed Costa-Hawkins and knocked on doors for that. Certainly supportive of making that happen, but we need these other pieces as well.
All right. Well, Jake, that is all the time we have, but we really appreciate you being here, and we really appreciate you putting yourself out there and doing the tough work to campaign. I know this is a long, long struggle, but we are so happy to have you out there fighting for us in our community, and really, really rooting for you. So look forward to
Thank you for having me. Always,
support.
yeah, always good to be back in here.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jake. All right. And remember, Jake for D6 is his website, and please get involved if you can. This time, I'm going to pass it over to some of our young organizers here who have been organizing the No Cop Money for California campaign, and they're going to explain that. I believe we have Tiffany, Bianca, and Daniel here.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, Daniel. All right, take it over.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you so much to Nick for having us. My name is Daniel McGreevy. I'm 18, and I live in Southern California. And sort of after the first initial wave of protests, one of my Twitter mutuals, actually, like Aaron in New York, he started a thread of how much money New York lawmakers were taking from New York police unions. And so that's where I got the idea to do this for California. And then I started working with another one of my friends, and then it kind of just snowballed into a group of like primarily almost entirely young activists who were compiling this data, going through state databases. And it started with just me and like one spreadsheet in a Twitter thread, and now it's evolved into like a formal website and social media presence. And we're super excited to talk about our next steps, and I'm going to pass it over to Priyanka to keep explaining.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. I'm 17. I started on with this campaign a little bit after Daniel did. The ultimate goal, I just want to talk about a little bit about our ultimate goal. It's accessibility for constituents and accountability for politicians. So when Daniel and Rye first created the spreadsheet, it was, even though technically all of campaign spending should be public information, it's really a convoluted process to be able to access that information. Police unions will go under names that don't have police or sheriff under it, so it's harder to track. And okay, everyone is frozen, but I'm not sure if I can still be heard.
You're
We
good.
still hear you fine. You're good.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, so it's hard to track. It's very difficult for constituents to access this type of information. So that's why on our website we have accurate information and updated campaign spending for politicians in California, which was all manually compiled, which was kind of a large task for Daniel and Rye. But and then on the other hand is accountability. So that's the other part of our campaign. We talk to politicians and we ask them to sign on to our pledge. Alex has signed on to it, who's here today, as well as Osh Kalra, who donated his 2020 police union money back to the community. So that's ultimately our goal, to get politicians to refuse to take money going forward, and if they have the capacity, to donate back to the community. So I'll just pass it back to Daniel and he can tell you a little bit more about how to get involved.
Yeah, so like Priyanka was saying, right now we have $36,000 have been reinvested into communities, being donated to groups like Black Lives Matter that were like originally police PAC contributions to candidates. So that's just one way to measure our success, and we're super excited about that. And we have 2 current members of LA City Council have signed the pledge. And so the thing that we really need is, this is a grassroots effort. As you can tell, it's being run by just a handful of teenagers. So what we need from you guys is to go to nocopmoneyca.com. And then there, right on our homepage, we have links that lead you to email and tweet your representatives. It has pre-filled things that will like allow you to contact them and demand that they take this pledge as well. And yeah, we're super, again, thankful for all of you guys for listening to us, and for Nick and SBPA for letting us talk.
Hey, well, I want to thank you guys for all the tremendous work you've done. I'm so excited about this campaign. It's such an important thing. And yeah, I mean, this is a very, very important issue. You know, we want people that represent us, that are free from corporate contributions and police contributions. So thank you again for all the hard work you guys have done. I'm super excited about this and happy to support.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you for being here. So we're going to pass it off now. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our education issues that have been going on. And we've got, I believe, a few candidates that are running locally for office here for school board and county board of education. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Schools and Communities First campaign and the ballot proposition 15, as well as some of the issues around school reopening. We won't be able to cover everything in this short time, but I want to start off with Brenda, if Brenda is with us. Are you there, Brenda?
I think Brenda is on as an attendee and not a panelist.
All right. Well, we will. Do we have Quetzal here yet?
Yeah, Quetzal is here. Do you want me to do the intro?
All right. Yes. Rosie, would you please introduce Quetzal? And then...
Sure. So first of all, thank you for everyone who's on here. We actually have 52 people. Yay. So I just want to give you a couple of words of Quetzal. Quetzal is basically what I call homegrown talent, meaning that also, you know, her family goes back generations. It's part of the, you know, Yaqui, you know, Native American tribe. She's a graduate of the, you know, of the San Jose Unified School District, and she's running for candidate of the Santa Clara County Board of Education. But one of the key things before she comes on and she shares a little bit about herself and her campaign is that I want to point out is that when you look at this body of elected officials, we don't have, I mean, we might have one young person there, but the other thing, I don't know if you're familiar with the cases of special ed students, which just keeps rising in our area. And Quetzal herself had to go through being a special ed student. And so some of her main things to focus on is really bringing more equity, bringing, more access, and really focusing on funding as funding, keeps getting shortened so that it's properly used. So take it away, Quetzal.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Quetzal Gomez. Thank you for the introduction, Rosie. I am a candidate for Santa Clara County Board of Education, Trustee Area 4. And for those of you who are a little like, I don't know what trustee area that is, that's mostly the area that San Jose Unified covers. It covers that whole, all north side to south side of San Jose, but it also includes a portion of the east side, which is the Oak Grove School District. And that feeds into the East Side High School District. So a little bit about myself. As Rosie mentioned, I am an Indigenous person. Our family goes back to Arizona before it was even Arizona. I come from a long lineage of strong matriarchs. Some of you may know my mother, Teresa Castellanos, who's the board president at San Jose Unified. And so education is something that has always been important to our family. Education, although it was not necessarily something easy for people in my family, we've always made sure is one of our values. I come from a generation where I was blessed to be able to go to an English-Spanish immersion school, while just one generation before, my mother and the generation before, my grandmother, would literally be punished for speaking Spanish at school. And so I am lucky to have been born and raised in this context, because being bilingual, fully immersed in English and Spanish, has given me the ability to not only participate, but advocate for multiple communities. So to a little bit more about my story, yes, as Rosie said, I am a former special ed student. I was not diagnosed until 7th grade. And so that really made school difficult for me. I struggled a lot. And sometimes I'm just reflecting back on my life and thinking about that 7th grader, that child who really struggled in school. Like, I can't imagine she's running for office to represent other kids just like her, to represent those kids who are left behind, those kids who, they're doing well enough that they don't get noticed, but it's not easy either, And so once I got the tools that I really needed, school became fun. School became something that I enjoyed, and I actually bloomed as a student after being diagnosed and getting additional help and resources that I really needed. I ended up going to a charter school for high school. I think that also is what makes me a unique candidate. My opponent, the incumbent, he is strongly backed by charters. He is known for rubber stamping charters, regardless of if they're prepared financially, regardless if they're prepared as an institution. And one of the things that made me decide to go against him, even though he's completely backed by charters, was that I have experienced the charter movement. I personally have seen how it's failed brown and Black kids. I personally seen how sometimes it works and sometimes it is a complete failure. And I am not afraid to speak against the charter movement. I know the charter movement has a lot of money, but my experience and the experience of my siblings, the experience of my colleagues that I'm still in touch with who went to charter schools, is an experience that needs to be talked about and needs to be in that space where decisions are being made for children who were like us at one point, right? A couple of the areas that I will be focusing on, where education is a hot topic right now. There's a lot that's happening, but the first pillar for me in my campaign is safety. And when I'm talking about safety, I'm talking about safety from regardless, like speaking in the terms of, it could be about harassment, it can be about COVID-19, it could be about gun safety, but we need to talk about safety for our students, our teachers, and our classified staff. Our teachers and our staff are the backbone of our education system, and we constantly leave them behind. A lot of our teachers can't afford to live in the districts where they work. Another pillar of my campaign, because of my personal experience with special education, is not only to promote it, but make it more accessible, especially for communities of color. For so many families, school is just a struggle. And parents, you know, parents advocate for their kids, but if they don't know what's out there, it's like, you know, talking to the wind. It's not going to make a difference. So part of my pillar of special education is making it more accessible for our underserved kids, for our kids of color. In line with that, one of the other areas that I'm focusing on is justice-involved kids. So in my day job, I work for Santa Clara County Office of Women's Policy, and one of the policy areas that I work for is for justice-involved women and girls. And so this board specifically looks at like non-traditional education, right? And so one of those things is for kids who are involved in the justice system. They oversee the branch and juvenile hall. And I have seen how, unfortunately, a lot of the times the kids who the organizations that work with the kids directly, unfortunately, are not the people who make the policy decisions for those kids. And so seeing that gap and seeing that that's something that I want to connect, and because of the work I already do at the county, I know that can be a connection. And I know that making that connection for those kids, we can create systems and programs for the kids that are culturally competent, that are gender responsive, that empower the child, not only make them go through the system, but truly empower the child so that they can be participants in our society. And lastly, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead and wrap it. Go ahead, finish up.
Okay, so I'm just gonna lastly say that my campaign is fully people powered. We will not accept any money from large corporations. I know the charters will not be giving me any money because I'm challenging them. But we're grassroots, we're labor backed. I am the sole candidate in this race that's endorsed by South Bay Labor Council, and also the only candidate that is backed by the California Teachers Association and all the major unions in our area, teachers unions in our area.
Good. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here, and thank you for putting yourself out there. I'm so excited about your campaign. This is such an important thing that you're doing, and we're very happy that you're doing this. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for running for County Office of Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah. So and I know there was some stuff in the chat from folks. Hopefully you can review that and take some notes. People will want to reach out to you, and then everyone knows it's Gomez for BOE.com if you would like to find out more and get in touch with Quetzal. So Brenda, I believe you're with us now. I want to pass it over to Brenda. Make sure that you should be able to speak. Brenda, I know you're out there.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. All right.
Okay, my name is Brenda Sandejas. I am a proud mom of 2 boys at Elem School District, and I am the only candidate that actually works in this district. I've been working here for 14 years with the RSP program right now with a teacher. I'm the aide, and I work with SDC in the autism program as well. I'll just say something really short about me because I'm also going to address the Jeff Rossing case. The reason when I started thinking about running for Elem School District is because of what I'm going to speak on right now. There was a lot of mismanagement with our kids, our children's funds, and that led me to get involved in our school district. So I got involved with site council, then I got involved with our DAC committee, and then I got involved with the school site budget. So this is a district budget committee. And then I started getting to Santa Clara County and joined their state budget trainings, because I think it's important to understand a budget before you take a seat in anywhere. And you have to understand how it's dispersed and what you can do as a trustee, because there's only so many things you can do, but that title alone gives you the power to create partnerships with a lot of companies that we have here in San Jose, and even our state senators and congressmen, to try to push to get more money into our schools. So So that was the reason that I started getting involved, and I decided to challenge a lot of our trustees who were taking funds from corporations. So 2 years ago, I ran corporate-free grassroots. I never took money from corporations or police, and I still will never take that. It's really hard, and I'm going to tell you because I've done it. It's the hardest thing to do because you have to stay clean and you have to have integrity when you're doing it. And you have to comb every donation that's given to you to make sure that it's really coming from our people. And 100% of my donations were just grassroots from our parents and people that believe in me. So I'm going to do it again this year. And again, I will not take police, sheriff department money, any money from anything that is corporation or related, because you want to avoid scandals like what I'm going to speak about today. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about Elem Rock School District construction scandal that happened July 14th. I mean, not July 14th, 2013, sorry. We began a relationship with Delterra as a school district, and we let them manage and do the construction. So they were managing and overseeing their own construction, and I still don't understand how that happened under our board. So this company decided to fund themselves $265 million of voter-approved facility bond measure money that turned out to be $325 million, sorry. So this got a lot of people questioning. A lot of people started seeing, how did this happen? Well, this corporation did fund a lot of the campaigns from Quintero, from Dolores Marquez, and Isa Herrera. They all got contributions from this company. And this created a conflict of interest because this is how this company got in, and they're known to give donations to trustees or anyone running for anything to get in. So now I'm going to forward to now, July 14th, the district attorney, Jeff Rawson, decided not to file charges against the company Delterra, Luis Rojas. He claimed that there was no evidence to support the legal action, and he also claimed the statute of limitation. So because of that, there's nothing going to happen to this company, and they basically got away with it. Well, we as parents were pushing for something to happen because this is taxpayers' money, right? We can't just let it go. This isn't pennies. This is millions that we're dealing with. And Ash Carla came to support us, and he wrote a letter to Xavier Becerra to explore criminal charges for whoever was involved in this. Because I think that he's the only one that can actually connect the dots with our DA and really see what happened, because there has to be something, there has to be someone has to be accountable for what happened. This wasn't just one person allowing this to happen, and I believe that there's more than one person that let this slide under the rug. So that's what's going on right now, and we're just waiting to see if Xavier Becerra will press criminal charges against the people that were involved in this.
Thank you for keeping an eye on that and informing us about it, Brenda. And I know you're doing a lot of work other than that, and trying to run for school board and get police out of schools. I wish we had more time, but we do need to keep pushing on here. But thank you so much for being with us, and please keep us informed on your campaign and how we can support you. If you have information on contacting you or things you want to share, please put it in the chat for folks, and so they know how to get a hold of you. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Brenda. Is Roxana here?
Yes, I am.
All right, Roxana, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We don't have a lot of time, but we were hoping to talk a little bit about schools and communities first and the importance of that, but also just some of the issues we're running into around schools reopening. I know this is a much longer discussion, and we don't have the time to really dig into it this evening, but could you give us the short version on what you've seen and some of the concerns you have around school reopening?
Yes. So let me If it's okay to share my screen, it says it's disabled. Is there any way to make me a co-host temporarily?
Yeah, let me see about if I can fix that.
If you go to participants and then
Yeah.
you right click on it should work.
So it should allow you to now. Did it change
All
it?
right. Okay, so I'm going to share, this is the short version. And if you'll forgive me for making light of a very serious topic, this is my attempt to bring some humor into our conversation here. Starting school in person, starting school online, homeschooling. This is unfortunately the situation we're in. It is I'm just going to stop the share for a minute. I saw that, I was like, this is exactly what we're up against right now. Every scenario is really problematic in its own ways. Obviously, going back to school before the COVID is over and all this, the safety, health safety issues. The distance learning has its own very serious issues in terms of just not being effective for learning, and then also disenfranchising a lot of our most vulnerable youth. And then also homeschooling, which is just the other now hot alternative that everybody is talking about, these pandemic pods. And it's really just another form of privatizing our public education. And so I have put together obviously it's much more, so much more to talk about than we have time for tonight. I did put together, and I'm going to share it in the chat. I have had an ongoing content curation page of concerns about privatization of our public education system. It's Charter Schools and Choice, a closer look. And it's with a collection of critical perspectives about the harms that the charter sector and the privatization of our public school has basically the rollout and the unchecked expansions, the harms that have unfolded with our communities of color. So I'm going to post that, and I've added to it some of the recent articles on this, new trend that is, it says it's the chart look. I hope that will work. It's a bit.ly link. But some of the most recent posts that I put on there are on these, what are being called pandemic pods, which it's a very confusing thing because some of them had initially started out within the public school classrooms where parents are just getting together and helping one another out. And we think that's certainly fine and everything good. Where there's this massive exodus of parents and students saying, okay, we're leaving the public system, we're going to create our own little mini micro schools. There's a lot of concern about safety issues, effectiveness, and then the extraction of funds away from the public system that is really there to support all students. There's also issues of equity and selection of students and exclusion of students with many of these different forms. And so I just wanted to offer some critical perspectives on those. Definitely as a hot topic issue, it's getting a lot of media press right now. KQED did a forum on it last week. I'm getting all kinds of media requests and everyone wants a statement immediately, like, what do you think about this? My concern is it's a form of kind of micro charter schools and just a lot of different concerns about it. We don't know yet where the funding would be coming from. There's just a lot of unanswered questions. We're trying to wrap our heads around what that would mean. And then the other issues just around distance learning. Many of our local districts are moving towards learning management platforms. One of them is called Canvas. There are very serious privacy and security issues with that platform. I've written a peer-reviewed journal article on it, and I'm glad to share more. And I could put another link on in the page here with concerns about, but also resources on privacy and data protection. So I'll put that as well for folks if you wanted to see. It's the EdPsycTech link. And so there's also student privacy toolkit from the Parent Coalition for Student Privacy, and a number of other updates and concerns. Really with the data, it's not so much that it's just being taken and sold and everything, that's an issue, but then it's when it would be going into analytics to try to say, oh, students are likely to succeed or not, or making kind of predictions about them in the future. Those are the ways that we're very concerned about that misuse and that weaponization of the data, and it always is going to harm most commonly our communities of color. So we have to be vigilant about this. It's the corporatization and kind of the datafication of all of our kids and their lives. We've got to put a halt to it, put very minimum some protections against that misuse. I know we're on limited time, Nick, and I see your head nodding there, so I'm just going to take you to stop talking.
No, I mean, I can never thank you enough for your vigilance, Roxana. I'm always looking to you for guidance on these important issues. And, you know, I think your, you know, ability to catch these things and break them down and, you know, really call them to our attention is invaluable. And I can't thank you enough for all the hard work you do. I know you
appreciate it.
Working day in and day out, you know, so.
I appreciate it. And I'll just share one other feature about those resource sites that I shared. There's a little funnel shaped icon at the top right if you're using your computer. So it just looks like a little funnel. It's a search feature. If you type in the keyword search that you're interested in, like you're just interested in articles on pods or on, you know, privacy or whatever it might be, it'll just pull up those articles. There's hundreds of articles in these resource pages. So it's just a tool. It's really been helpful for me to organize my resources and thoughts and stuff. But if that helps anyone who's looking quickly for resources, it's just another aspect of the page that's helpful. Thank you, Nick.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, Roxana.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
And it's good to see everyone, by the way. And congratulations. I'm excited, Tonkel and Brenda, for your campaigns to support you. Thank you for being
here. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you all for being here. So many issues around education, and as a special education teacher myself, these are, you know, very high on my list. So I thank you all again. I just do want to put one plug in for Proposition 15 that will be on our ballots in November. This is a very important ballot measure trying to correct some of the, you know, historic redlining here in California around Proposition 13 that was passed in 1978. And, you know, this would provide a lot of funding for our schools and for our cities. So please look into Prop 15 and vote yes on Prop 15 in November. So all the time we have for that. And I will try to pull up my screen again.
Yeah, can you remind everyone of our next meetings?
Our next, which one, what's that?
When they can engage with us in our next meetings. Hi, Roxana.
Well, I don't know the dates or times, but you can find information on our website, southbaypa.org. And we'll put other contacts and email information in the chat, so you guys can also use that as well. I don't have the dates with me, but I want to bring up our next guest here, and Peggy is going to be introducing her for us.
Hi there, this is Peggy. I'm going to be introducing Janice Lobosapigao. She is the daughter of immigrants from the Philippines. She is the author of 2 books of poetry, Microchips for Millions and Like a Solid to a Shadow. She is a poetry editor at Angel City Review and co-founder of Sunday Jump in Los Angeles' historic Filipino town. She is the 2020-2021 Santa Clara County Poet Laureate. Welcome, Janice.
Ooh, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for having me. I wanted to shout out Peggy and also Jeffrey. Thank you for organizing and having me here today. I am actually like really inspired by everybody who has already presented and been on the line. You know, I thought that I was gonna, you know, a lot of people turn to poetry for inspiration, but really I already feel like it's here. So I'm gonna just try to add to it. I'm really excited to serve as the Santa Clara County Poet Laureate for this and next year. I also want to say like, thank you for your work. Like I really love that I get to be Poet Laureate during an election year. And so I hope that the poems that I'm going to be reading right now reflect an aspect of the needed progress, the needed work for social justice and activism that I think the South Bay Progressive Alliance represents. So today I'm going to read 2 poems, only 2, maybe 1, I don't know, maybe 3, but two for sure. One that I wrote and another one that I read, and it's written by another poet. I think it's really important as poets and as people to always pass the mic. To me, this means that I think it's important to amplify the voices of people who need to be heard, who are also attempting to survive during this current time of white supremacy and public health crises and voter repression and just the continuous political assault against communities of struggle. And for me, that's where poetry lives. It's in those moments of detesting injustice. And for me, poetry is that liberation. The first poem I'm going to read is named after a student I used to work with when I tutored high school students in East Palo Alto. The poem is about just like our experiences working together. Her mother was unfortunately deported to Mexico in 2011. And this was when she was in high school. And, you know, today and most days I'm thinking about students, immigrant, international, undocumented students and their families. Teachers during a time when school reopenings mean like risking the lives of, you know, risking our own lives and telling teachers to write wills. Like it's just a strange time. So students are always on my mind. My goal as Poet Laureate, my project is to start a Youth Poet Laureate program. So you will see a lot more information about that, hopefully floating around the county. But I believe that our lives and our youth's lives are always tied to policy and practice. I believe that the world we need and the world we're going to build will be from the examples and futures that are written into poetry and literature. And I think literature shows us those endless possibilities and the incredible ability to feel. To me, I think that when feelings come out, feelings are, if anything, words. And so that to me is poetry. So this first poem is called Alicia, and I'm just gonna read it. A good grade on Alicia's history test is the plane ticket to Mexico for the summer. She must know legacies of US presidencies and how the New Deal provided relief, recovery, reform, US intervention in Latin America and its impact on the global economy. Every day for 3 weeks, I tutor Alicia intensely at school and at Starbucks. And I say we smell like coffee. She says it's sweeter in Jalisco. Stuck between binder paper and hot Cheetos, she is somewhere else. Alicia remembers the details of May Day, moments before the arrest, no ID, how her mom got out of the car and never could come back. History is too hard, she says a week before testing. Tell me about social and political policies, I say again. She rolls her pencil along her fingers. It becomes a clenched fist. Who cares? She replies. You need to, I say. This is too hard. I don't know, she continues. And between frappuccinos and this history test is her family. What are the responsibilities of a government during economic crisis? Is there a danger that assistance will lead to dependence? Are there answers? Alicia talks to the end of the table, repeats how it's too hard, says it's unfair, asks, why did they take her? Why can't she be here with me? Why can't she come back? Ooh, that's the first poem. I also want to read a second poem written by a poet named Ross Gay. This is a very popular poem. Maybe people have read it already, but it is called A Small Needful Fact. And it's just like a really short poem. A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means perhaps that with his very large hands, perhaps in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants which most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe. I just love that poem. It's a beautiful poem. Do I have time for one more or should I?
Let's do it. We want to hear it.
Oh, let's do it. Okay,
Yeah.
This will be the last one. Thanks, Nick.
Right. Yeah.
And just to be very real, during this time of shelter in place and COVID-19, I'm always thinking about the people whose lives that are lost, the deaths from a very, very preventable, completely preventable disease. And it's during this time also, I lost my mother. She was battling cancer. And so this poem I wrote is like the first poem I've written, like around the time that was, what I didn't know at the time was the end of her life. And so this poem is called Bill Pay. And it starts with an epigraph by Chance the Rapper. You smell like light, gas, water, electricity, rent. Bill Pay. We don't know how to pay the bills on time, and we don't know the password to your bank account. And in all of our languages, I understand why you stacked linens and face towels and rubber bands and plastic bags in drawers and hallway closets, everything filled to the brim. And now that I'm older, I know that doctors and lawyers are 1,000 times the cost of Alfredo sauce jars and plastic silverware in the garage, stockpiles of love and future and sacrifice and your forethought and of our survival. And we don't know how to fix the clogging bathtub. And why isn't there a drain in the sink? And our tenants are spiders and the occasional garden cockroach. Who are we without your meals for 20 people? And what do I do without your pambahay ware? Last week, I showed my dad how to do a mobile deposit. I used my good English for the phone call with your employer. The microwave installed into the cupboards only has 2 functioning buttons. We tell your boss, your coworkers, me, Dad, William, Cynthia, Paulo, they ask us when you'll be back. And our Christmas gifts for each other are still under a desk in March. And all of the aunties and uncles and nibblings visit with fried chicken and arroz caldo. And it's hard to vacuum and disinfect when you're sleeping in your hospital bed in the living room. Our Lady of Nazareth, of peace, of Remeron, of Lovenox, our shrine of home health aides. And when Dad asks me to call unemployment, and when William asks me to buy you more diapers, and when I ask Cynthia if she's coming, and when Cynthia calls me when she sees your irregular breathing, Ma, we wonder, how can we make you stay watching Netflix with us, your kids? Did we cobble enough karma to keep you, to sleep through watching American Pickers with Dad? Can we leave our whole house neglected for your pulse? Can God let the bills pay themselves for now? How many rosaries will equal rent? And when will we all know if we have paid enough in prayers? If this will be it, or if this will be the day, or tomorrow is the time, when will we know if God will keep all of the lights on? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janice, for being here this evening, and then for those beautiful words. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Yeah, all right. So at this time, we're going to move on to our final roundtable. And like we said, this whole theme was around reimagining thriving communities. And of course, it's a large topic to cover. We're not going to talk about everything, but as you've seen with all of the speakers we've had so far, we've covered quite a bit this evening. And we're going to wrap it up with looking at what would reimagining safe communities, safe and thriving communities look like. And first, before we introduce our speakers, I want to introduce my co-hosts or my co-moderators this evening. The first of which is Helen. She is a SBPA steering committee member and an organizer for the No Cotton Money campaign, which you heard about this evening. The other is Mary. She is founder of San Jose Strong. I'd like to give Mary a moment to speak about and tell us what is San Jose Strong. And Mary, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Hello, Nick. Thank you so much.
Hey.
San Jose Strong is a recently formed organization focused on centralized information dissemination for citizens of San Jose. As a guide to activism I made on social media has now turned into a large-scale organization. Our main goal is to have our online website platform by the beginning of September, where people can deep dive into all things South Bay and San Jose. So if you want to understand more about local government that's been happening, we'll have voter guides, political landscape research, building off of the existing efforts of amazing organizations represented here. You know, if you want to deep dive into public services, you know, we work with a lot of the equity coalitions in teachers, getting cops out of schools, centralizing all of those efforts so people know where to find all the information that's going on, and as well as our in-house projects that we're working on, which I'm happy to discuss with anybody here if they want to ping me or reach out to me. I know we're plugging the website, so our email is on there. But yeah, I'm happy to help with this panel discussion with Helen and Nick and to dive into reimagining safe communities.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Mary, and thank you for all that work. So let's get into it then. We have an amazing panel here. We had a surprise last minute guest join us, Raj, who's going to be joining us. He's the co-founder and coordinator of Silicon Valley Debug, which Raj will speak a little more on Debug. We have Chesa Boudin, who is the district attorney of San Francisco. A little bit about him, you know, he's personally impacted by parental incarceration and failings of the criminal justice system. District Attorney Boudin was inspired to become a public defender and now a decarceral prosecutor. He is focused on reforming the criminal justice system and making our communities safer by developing data-driven policies to expand alternatives to incarceration and treat the root causes of crime. In its first few months in office, District Attorney Boudin ended the office's practice of cash bail, eliminated status enhancements, implemented California's first diversion program for primary caregivers, and ended the prosecution of charges resulting from racist pre-textual traffic stops. He's also implemented policies to prevent the filing of charges relying on officers with prior misconduct and to allow victims and witnesses of police violence to be eligible for victims' compensation. So District Attorney Boudin also created the economic crimes against workers unit in the DA's office. So we're very happy to have District Attorney Chesa Boudin, and thank you for being with us this evening. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. As well, Helen, would you like to introduce our other speaker?
Yeah, our other speaker is Sajid Khan, who is, he runs a podcast, Aider and Abetter, I believe, and also has an amazing blog that talks about some topics we're going to cover today. And he's a public defender in the Santa Clara County.
All right. First off, just thank you all for making the time and being here this evening for this important discussion. Wanted to go ahead and just start things off. Chesa, I know that you ran a really intense campaign in San Francisco. The police union spent, I believe, over $750,000 opposing you. Just wanted to see, after 7 months in office, what sort of what has those first 7 months been like? What are some of the challenges, maybe unexpected or expected, and what are some of the successes that you see thus far?
Thank you, Nick, and it's great to be with all of you. It's great to be on a panel with friends and colleagues who I know are doing such critical work in the South Bay. I wish I could be down there in person. I wish we could all be in person today. And that, I guess, is a good segue to the answer to your question. We certainly have had lots of unexpected challenges, COVID-19 first and foremost among them. I think, you know, I was signing up for a really big job, and I knew that, and I knew that the system I was inheriting had so many, you know, fundamental and deep flaws that I knew it would take years to try and accomplish the goals that I set out for, the commitments that I had made. COVID-19 has dramatically shaped the 7.5 months I've been in office. It's created a huge risk, of course, to the folks who are incarcerated, the folks who work in our jails and prisons, and all of our staff that are going into the courthouse, the court staff, the public defenders, the private defense lawyers, and of course, all of my staff. So we have had to make significant changes to how we do business. We also recognized that mass incarceration in the context of COVID-19 is a very real threat to public safety. And I ran my campaign on a commitment to end mass incarceration, to reduce over-reliance on incarceration. COVID-19 made that more urgent than ever. And I'm proud to say that since I took office, we've cut the jail population from around 1,250 people when I took office in January to around 750 people now. We have more work to do. We'd like the number to be lower, and we are working on that. But it's a huge, really unprecedented decrease. And we've done it at a time when crime rates are also falling. I think we've proven that the fear-mongering from the same police unions that spent that $750,000 attacking me is simply lies and fear-mongering. We know that we can safely decarcerate. We know that especially if we invest in housing and in community supports for people, we can decarcerate and crime rates can stay low and drop even lower. That's what we've seen in this period. And we've also, responded to the demands from the Black Lives Matter movement and to the national uprising around the murder of George Floyd and others with a series of very concrete policies addressing police transparency and law enforcement accountability. You mentioned some of those, I think, in your introduction. I had an op-ed in the New York Times earlier this week highlighting some of the steps that we've taken as an office. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in this very uncertain and volatile period. I know we have a long way to go. We have a lot more work to do, but I'll just give you a few examples of things we've done that I think are really important when we think about public safety and responding to the crisis moment we're in. Prohibiting my staff from ever asking for money bail was one of the first things I did. Creating a diversion program for primary caregiver parents facing criminal charges. Ending the regular use of status enhancements like 3 strikes and gang enhancements. Hiring a lawyer focused exclusively on prosecuting corporations that steal from or undermine the safety of their workers. Expanding access to housing for victims, especially of domestic violence. So we have emergency support for crime victims. Urging the city of San Francisco through a legal resolution at the Board of Supervisors to stop hiring officers with a history of serious misconduct. Creating an internal policy that we will stop relying on or filing cases based on officers' investigation or testimony when we know that those officers have lied in the past or committed serious misconduct in the past. Insisting that prosecutors around the state share the conflict of interest they have with police departments and stop accepting financial contributions from police unions or political support from police unions. And requiring that my lawyers review body-worn camera footage before filing charges like resisting arrest or assaulting an officer, which we know all too often are used by police to cover up their own misconduct and excessive force. Those are just a few of the things we've done, and I'm excited to share some more things we've done with you over the course of this evening.
Oh, that is an incredible list, and just really happy to have you here this evening to talk about these things. I'm going to pass it over to Helen or Mary. I believe they had a question.
Helen, would you like me to go, or do you want to take the second question first? Up to you.
Okay. So as Nick said in your biography, short bio, there is a shift from public defender to a decarceral prosecutor. Can you talk about the distinctions, if any, and also elaborate on your train of thought with, as a prosecutor in that role, how you make those decisions?
For sure. Thank you for the question, Helen. And I think you all mentioned in the introductions that Sajid has a podcast, Aider and Abetter. I've been a guest on that, and I also have a podcast. I recently had Sajid on our podcast, and we got to talk about some of these exact issues. So I would encourage folks to check out that conversation.
Yeah, and Sajid also jump in as well. I believe these questions are open to everyone as well. So
yeah, and if other folks want to weigh in, Raj, Sajid, I don't need to to answer that question if folks have thoughts on the first question.
Why don't you start it off, Chesa, and then we'll have
Sure.
Sajid follow up.
Well, look, I think that there is a really different perspective that you have as a public defender than you do as a district attorney. And I say that really just because of the ethical obligations that we have. A public defender or a defense lawyer is there in the courtroom to advocate for their client. Their job, their legal responsibility is to zealously advocate for the best interests of the person that they represent. It's a very, in some ways, simple and pure focus on not that the job is easy or simple, but that the focus, the ethical obligation is a very clear and straightforward one. You fight within the law for your client. As a district attorney, the ethical obligation is more complex and it's more subject to interpretation, which is one of the challenges we've had with many prosecutors across the country historically, being focused on punishment rather than healing, being focused on prison rather than restoration, being focused on using evidence as a way, using victims as a piece of evidence rather than listening to what victims want or need to heal. And as a district attorney, the technical legal obligation that I have and that my office has is to represent the best interests of justice and the people of the state of California, to try to implement policies that promote justice and public safety. That's a much broader, more complex ethical obligation than simply fighting for one individual person. When I was a public defender, I was lucky to be able to work on some broader system reforms. The work I did around bail reform and immigration advocacy and early representation of people arrested, for example, were systemic reforms. But as a district attorney running an office, I actually get to do that kind of work all day, every day. And it's much more part of the core job function. I'm thinking about not just individual crime victims or individual people accused of committing crimes, but also the broader policies that shape public safety. And so it's a bigger job in many ways. I'm also supervising a staff of over 300 people, but it's really rewarding and refreshing to be able to focus on more than one case at a time, and to think about not just what benefits one person, but what justice means and how we can try to expand access to justice to all of us.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Sajid, did you want to follow that up?
Sure. What we're witnessing from Chesa right now is a redefining and a revolutionizing of the role of a district attorney. For so long in our counties and in our state, we have devolved the role of a district attorney to being a prosecutor, to being the prosecutor that prosecutes crimes and that prosecutes offenders and the quote unquote criminals and essentially locks them up. And that is what we have devolved that role to. And when we think of the people of the state of California, that has often meant to the exclusion of the accused. So the people that I represent every day in our courthouses, either in juvenile court or in adult court, it's felt as if that the people of the state of California that the district attorney is advocating for has not included the people that I represent. It's almost as if they are outside of the state or outside of their, outside of the citizenship. And so what we're seeing from Chesa and what we're seeing from other, this new brand of district attorneys is a revolutionizing of the role and broadening it from just being merely a prosecutor to a justice advocate, a public safety champion that is for all the people, including the people that have done bad things, including the people that have committed crimes and hurt themselves, hurt other people, and hurt our community. And so that's what we are seeing a shift from Chesa and what we would love to see continue in Santa Clara County and in our state widely.
Yeah, to build off of that, via conversations in Santa Clara and in South Bay, I wanted to direct this question to Raj about where you see the role of debug, like what what does debug do, and your experience getting involved in this work in the landscape.
My bad. I'm on mute. Hey, Mary. Hey, Chesa, Sajid. What's up, everybody? Good to see everyone. First off, I got to start every Zoom conversation by hearing Janice do poems. That should be official for every Zoom meeting from here on out. I'm actually calling in from Seattle just as a way to kind of explain what Debug does a little bit. We just came up here straight from the airport, where one of the things we do is we make what we call social biography videos, which are little documentary videos for people that are facing criminal charges that could explain to the court who they are beyond a case file. And so we came up to Seattle today for a young man that is being charged as an adult. So he's 15 years old, and the prosecutor up here wants to charge him as an adult to face adult time of incarceration in prison. And so part of what Debug is doing is trying to fight back against these institutions, how they depict people and how they throw them away. And so we're a community organizing hub in San Jose. We've been around since 2001. One of the things that we do that has allowed us to be kind of co-conspirators with Chesa and Sajid over the years is we have an organizing model for families whose loved ones are facing criminal charges and facing immigration detention, on how families and communities and individuals that are not lawyers, how they could impact the outcome of cases for their loved ones to secure freedom and collectively change and transform the landscape of power in the courts, so that it's not simply a binary of prosecutor and defense attorney when it comes to finding, locating, and landing injustice, that we believe that's a community conversation. So we have an organizing model called participatory defense, and what it basically is families meet at Debug twice a week. Now they meet on Zoom, and they all have loved ones that are at Elmwood, and Main Jail, Juvenile Hall, the Ranch, DJJ, CDCR, Immigration Detention Centers, and they're trying to fight back, and they're trying to fight back from the authority of power of community. And so we started it in San Jose, and folks that are from the South Bay here should feel proud that your families here fought back for the freedom of their loved ones in San Jose, and it led to a national model that's now being practiced in over 36 cities. So San Jose's kind of sentiments of fighting for justice has gone national, and we're excited about that. It's families like Blanca Vasquez and Gail Noble and folks that you all may see when you're walking into court. So in terms of like how we see this conversation, look, we were always excited about Chesa when he was a public defender, when he's a prosecutor, when he's hanging out at the bar, whatever, we're excited. And, you know, he was also doing a lot of things as a public defender that was stretching out what that role was supposed to be by changing policies, by making groundbreaking litigation that also led to legislation. So part of the way I see like Chesa and Sajid is like, they're freedom fighters that are movement makers, and they may be just kind of dressing themselves in different suits, walk different walks, but we all know what this work's about, what this movement's about, and what their ingenuity and creativity has allowed them to do, which is to really evolve some of these classical roles of what a prosecutor is supposed to be or what a public defender is supposed to be. And so as a representative of the community that works with families that are really dependent upon the quality of their work and want to be co-collaborators in them for freedom, we're excited about what they represent and where we could go from here.
Absolutely. Mary, were you going to ask something, or?
I was gonna defer to Helen for an additional question.
Yeah, I was wondering if, since you guys are kind of like co-conspirators, if you each speak to kind of the parallels between like successes of, you know, the South Bay and San Francisco, and what we can learn from Chesa's amazing, you know, like the 50% reduction in incarceration, for example, and kind of, you know, tie together the path forward.
And I think really quickly, to build off of that, sort of like how you juxtapose the different structures, whether talking about San Francisco or talking about San Jose or Santa Clara, and sort of, which could lead into talking about what prompted you to get engaged in these landscapes in the first place. If you wanted to touch in on that too, open to all of your wisdom.
Well, I can answer Helen's questions real quick because, look, San Francisco is, just a freeway away from San Jose, but it's a world away in terms of what justice looks like. And a lot of that is because of who's in leadership positions and the sort of courage that they have, or maybe they're currently lacking, but with the political push, maybe they get there. So for example, like we were drawing stuff from San Francisco, even when Chesa was a public defender, we went up to San Francisco and saw what they're doing in terms of representation for people that were held in the jail pre-arraignment. So arraignment is your first shot at court. And so what happens at arraignment is people show up at court and they don't know what it's for or what to do about it, who their attorney is, and their attorney doesn't know anything about it. So what Chesa initiated in San Francisco with Justice Angel of ours, Jeff Adachi, who was a public defender at the time, was a unit that was going into the jails pre-arraignment, talking to people, finding out their fuller story, finding out their side of the allegation, and then be able to put forward a full defense at arraignment to get charges dropped or dismissed or get them home pre-trial. We actually brought Chesa and some of his colleagues down to Santa Clara, shared the model, and actually have implemented it here in Santa Clara. We're still looking for more significant funding from the county. They haven't committed long-term. So we're kind of supplementing it with some foundational philanthropic dollars. But that is the type of creativity that we need. And then when you look at it on a DA or a prosecutor level, our DA recently announced at a press conference a sort of set of platforms that he saw as moving in a progressive direction. A lot of those specific policies that you'll read about were things that were already in place, that were sort of writing on the wall or was already kind of gaining some momentum around the death penalty or the lack of reliance on money bail and that sort of thing. But we have a lot of ground to make up in Santa Clara County, not to necessarily even catch up with San Francisco and Chesa, but just to reach neutral, We have in Santa Clara County, a DA's office that is challenging state reforms that have already been voted in. So in California, our legislators voted in and passed laws that said you can't transfer young people under the age of 16 into the adult system, sort of like the same exact scenario why I'm here in Seattle. Now, that was democratically elected officials that listened to their constituents and saw the changing tide of what juvenile justice looked like. And while the rest of the state welcomed it, transformed the way they treated young people, our DA actually fought against 1391 and put up constitutional challenges to that law, where now we literally have young people that we know of at debug because their parents come to debug that are still facing and exposed to adult time in prison because our DA's office will not even catch up to the rest of the state. So same is true with 1437, the felony murder rule, which I know Chesa's worked on and Sajid's worked on. Our local DA has challenged the constitutionality of that law, even though it's led to the freedom of people across the state. It clearly is common sense. What he's essentially saying is someone should not face the penalties of a murder if they weren't involved in the murder, if they happen to just be in the area. Our DA has not, maybe there's different definitions of progressive and regressive, but when I look at the ingredients, it doesn't make like a progressive picture to me. So we got a lot of ground to make up.
The biggest thing that I would take inspiration from Chesa and what's happening in San Francisco that we would love to see adopted immediately in Santa Clara County is the ending of gang enhancements. Jeff Rosen kind of tiptoed around that last week and initiated a policy that he won't be filing gang enhancements on misdemeanor cases in most cases, but he even gave himself an out on that. And we don't see that. We don't see gang enhancements typically charge on misdemeanor cases. So what he's addressing is a kind of a non-entity. What we see is gang enhancements charged to make things felonies, and we also see gang enhancements charged on against people in our county that are rooted in racist policing tactics. So when Chesa in San Francisco is ending the use of gang enhancements, it not only has the impact in the courthouse in terms of what the potential punishments will be against people that commit certain crimes in our county, and it also impacts how those convictions are secured via gang enhancement laws and very prejudicial evidence that's admissible at trials during gang trials that are not admissible otherwise. But it also impacts how we police our communities. So much of our county and city resources are devoted to gang intelligence collection. It means that police officers are literally descending upon certain communities in our county, and specifically in San Jose, that are generally communities of color, that are generally densely populated communities of color, and essentially harassing, violating those communities, especially young people in Santa Clara County that are of Latin descent. And so police officers are corralling and chasing and photographing and cuffing and arresting young boys in order to put them into a gang database, in order to get information about who they are, what nicknames they have, what tattoos they have, what colors they might be wearing, who they're associating with, what neighborhood they're from, and then ultimately using that evidence or that information for gang prosecutions, ultimately to send these young boys and men to prison for lengthy, if not life terms. So it's just a completely racist set of constructs that doesn't make our communities safer. It antagonizes communities of color in San Jose, and it needs to end. And it's just not going to end by stopping the prosecution of gang enhancements on misdemeanor crimes. The other thing that we've taken from Chesa is the ending of prosecuting strike enhancements or 3 strikes enhancements. What we see in Santa Clara County in my years as a public defender here for about a dozen years is the disproportionate draconian sentences that are imposed on people not for their current offense, but because they have something in their background, a conviction in their background that could be years and years and years prior, completely unrelated to the current offense, that is then making them ineligible for probation and then landing them in prison, further bloating our prison system and further traumatizing those individuals and making it even less likely that they will ever reintegrate into our society in a healthy way. And then the other thing that Raj just mentioned in juvenile court is the issue with direct files. I don't know that Chesa has addressed that yet in San Francisco, but the concern is the prosecution of children as adults. The state of California has eliminated prosecuting 14 and 15-year-old kids as adults, but still Santa Clara County prosecutors are still charging 16 and 17-year-old youth as adults and subjecting them to prison sentences and to potentially even life in prison. And that hasn't changed and is still practiced. And it's not something that Rosen addressed at all in his press conference last week. And so we're hoping to see some movement in that. And then lastly, it's accountability for police officers that violate our communities. Police officers that violate the United States Constitution when they illegally stop and search people, when they illegally pull people over for pre-textual or racially motivated stops, police officers that use excessive, unreasonable, dehumanizing violence against people in our communities. And I would posit that the Santa Clara County DA has not only not held those police officers accountable, they have perpetuated that police violence for decades by not prosecuting those police officers, by not disciplining those police officers, but also by using the quote unquote evidence collected by those police officers regularly in our courts, and then shielding them from prosecution by charging the crimes that Chesa referred to earlier: resisting arrest, assaults on police officers, And so there has been this very entangled relationship between the Santa Clara County DA's office and our police departments that leads to the perpetuation of police violence in our community, and that needs to stop.
Yeah, thank you, Sajid. I think this conversation just shows how far we have to go. Like Raj was saying, Santa Clara County has a long way to go even to get to neutral. And I think an important point that you brought up in another discussion, Sajid, was around the fact that, you know, we have these protests going on, but in some ways they were misdirected at City Hall versus being directed at the DA's office. Because I think that's a misunderstanding in general. People don't understand where powers lie sometimes. You know, City Hall did fail to make any significant changes. You know, they failed to defund the police in any way, even after hundreds of phone calls and public comments. But you know, I think that your point on directing our attention towards the district attorney's office and the fact that Jeff Rosen is an elected official, he's up for election in 2022. You know, these are things that our community needs to be aware of. You guys have listed numerous important things that need to change. I was going to pass it over to Helen for, I think she had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Sajid, for that super thorough response. I had a few questions, but you answered them before I even had a chance. So in the interest of time, I'm going to turn this next question to Chesa. But thank you, Sajid, again. So the next question is about your California State Bar letter about refusing police contributions to campaigns. And as someone who's been organizing with the No Cop Money CA campaign to pressure politicians, both elected and challengers, to take the pledge to not take cop money, I was wondering if you have any insight on how that letter has been going and what you see as the next steps towards getting like cop money out of politics and their influence out.
First of all, thank you for your organizing on that issue, Helen. It's a really important issue. And for a little bit of context, one of the big issues, not just obviously for district attorneys, but it's a unique issue for district attorneys, as Helen said, is the influence of police union money in electoral politics. And about 95% of elected district attorneys across the country receive donations and or endorsements from police unions. Just for an example of the scale of what we're talking about, in Los Angeles alone, police unions spent more than $64 million on influencing state and local political outcomes over the last 20 years. So an average of more than $3 million a year influencing the outcome of state and local elections. In this election cycle in Los Angeles, the police unions have already spent more than $2 million supporting the incumbent and opposing George Gascon's challenge to the incumbent. So, obviously there's a really big influence here. What our letters focus on is what we call curing the conflict. What I mean by that is district attorneys rely every single day on reports and testimony of police officers. They rely on their testimony to prove the vast majority of the criminal cases that we file every day. We rely on their judgment about whether we should file a charge at all. And because of that close relationship, it can be really politically challenging for many elected prosecutors, elected district attorneys, to have the courage or the independence to investigate or prosecute police officers when they kill civilians or lie under oath or commit other crimes. It's particularly challenging to expect district attorneys to file criminal charges against police officers when they are accepting contributions from police unions and relying on political support from police unions in order to get elected in the first place. And there's really no way to argue it's not a conflict of interest to have prosecutors who decide when, how, and if to prosecute police are also lining up to take money directly from police unions for their campaigns. So the proposal that I made was kind of a couple parts. One was a pledge that I would never seek support from police unions in a election to be district attorney because of that conflict. And I made that pledge together with 2 other elected district attorneys from San Joaquin County and Contra Costa County, as well as 1 formerly elected district attorney, George Gascon, from formerly of San Francisco District Attorney's Office. We invited every single other elected district attorney in the state to join us in that pledge. And we urged the California Bar and the American Bar Association to issue an ethical rule that would prohibit district attorneys from directly accepting contributions from police unions because of this conflict of interest. Now, we had the first part of a hearing at the state bar last week on August 11th, and last week. And the next one is on August 11th, where they're going to be holding another hearing for public comment. My understanding is that at the hearing held last week, they received more public comments than ever in the history of a state bar rule hearing. So we did a really good job getting the word out, but the August 11th hearing is going to be really important. I want to encourage people to call in at 10 a.m. on August 11th. Check my social media. We'll be posting info and template scripts to support our proposal. I will tell you that the California Bar had a number of questions for us, and they're asking us to respond to some concerns, mostly concerns raised by police officer groups, about whether our proposal is somehow a First Amendment issue, that we'd be restricting the First Amendment rights of police unions. So we're working on our response to that. We welcome input. I will be very clear, nothing in our proposal seeks to limit the ability of police unions to spend their money. What it does is it puts the onus on candidates for district attorney and office holders of the office of district attorney to avoid embedding themselves in a relationship that leads to this conflict of interest, and that so undermines the ability of our offices to evaluate police misconduct and criminal conduct with a neutral and detached perspective. It's not about limiting police speech or police spending of their money. It's about making sure people who want to hold the office that I'm so lucky and humbled to hold do so without the entanglement or conflicts of interest that lead to the undermining of the integrity of the entire criminal justice system.
Thank you so much for all of this awesome information. We're a little bit low on time, so I wanted to close out by allowing our panel speakers to give, a quick spark notes pitch about just sort of summarizing what you would envision an ideal future being with your work, as well as, you mentioned this meeting in August, like what's an actionable pitch that you might have to everyone tuning in tonight to get engaged, get active, and to stay in tune to make their voice heard. And so we could round to whoever wants to go first.
I mean, I could go first just because I don't think I have the wise picture that some of the other folks may have. All I can really talk about is the immediacy of the crisis right now. So right now in the South Bay at the Santa Clara County jails, there's an outbreak of COVID. As of this evening, we were just on one of the news channels, had some of the families talking. We have about over 20 cases in Elmwood and 15 cases in the main jail. And those are the families that, I talked about when I first joined your panel, who they're meeting. So you have families that are dealing with the crisis of incarceration and not knowing if their loved ones are going to survive. And our jail has a history of killing people under their care. And we're hearing stories from people that are calling us desperately from the jail and from people's family members. We're saying they're in the infirmary, COVID positive, and they're given a bucket to share, to bathe. That's in our jail. That's today, 2020. And so where does that fit in what people could do today? At the same evening that I'm telling you there are 24 cases of COVID positive in Elmwood, is the same day that the district attorney's office is challenging pretrial releases of people that are COVID positive in Santa Clara County that are held pretrial. Held pretrial means they have not been convicted of a crime. and there is a presumption of innocence that we theoretically operate by. So just earlier today, the DA's office said, no, we want this person kept in a cage, even though he's dying of COVID. So what progressives in the South Bay could do is call Jeff Rosen and just tell him to tell his line prosecutors to stop opposing pretrial releases that public defenders are asking for, because the consequences are life or death. So that could happen tomorrow. I hope you call. I hope you put some pressure on him to bend that arc at a higher clip than maybe he's planning. And then the second thing is you could be on the lookout for, we're going to be releasing an outward-facing document, which is the culmination of the families that I was talking about have released a divest in the criminal punishment system and invest in communities chart, written by exactly who I was talking about. So the father of the young man who is still being held and being charged as an adult in Santa Clara, who is now going to be a Supreme Court case where the DA's office is challenging constitutionality 1391. His dad wrote the piece for us on what we should do in terms of defunding the juvenile justice system. So if people can be on the lookout for that in the next few days, and please support it, because abolition doesn't stop with just ending the police. It has to shrink the role of the entire apparatus of the criminal punishment system. That includes things like prosecutors. It includes things like sheriffs. And we're hoping that we could take this transformative moment and solidify some real change and not make it be just something that passes by in a week or so.
For me, I would say that I'm imagining a system in Santa Clara County that first starts with honesty. I listened to Brian Stevenson on a podcast recently, and he said in order for there to be sustainable change, in order for there to be real reform, it first requires truth-telling. It requires truth-telling about the traumas inflicted upon generations of people in our community through the criminal injustice system and through systemic racism in our county, in Santa Clara County, in San Jose. We didn't hear that from Jeff Rosen last week. We didn't hear any contrition or reflection about his office's role in the systemic dehumanization of people of color in our county and in San Jose. So the first thing is that it starts with an honest reflection on what has gone on here in this county and what is happening here, including the things that are happening right now at the jail that Raj just described. And then we take it a step further. It requires a recognition of the humanity of all people, including people that have done bad things, including the alleged quote unquote gang members in East San Jose and in those communities of our city. The things that we're talking about here today, gang enhancements, 3 strikes laws, direct filing, leaving people in the jail to die from COVID, all of that is rooted in a system and in a DA's office that does not recognize the humanity of people, of all people. And so what we are hoping to witness and what we are demanding is a district attorney and a law enforcement system and a criminal legal system that recognizes the humanity of everyone, including all the people that I've outlined. Only when we recognize that humanity can we truly effectuate criminal legal system reform, and can we tear down the system of mass incarceration. And so how that can manifest in terms of action items is I saw Jeff Rosen's email pop up on the chat window. Let's call him, write him, write op-eds. I called for a protest at his office, show up in the county corridor there, and let him know that gang enhancements need to end, that the direct filing of teenagers needs to end, that the 3 strikes law needs to end, that police officers need to be held accountable when they kill and when they inflict dehumanizing violence upon members of our community. I saw the San Jose Mercury News article that said that 18 people have been killed in the last 5 years by the San Jose Police Department, none of which were ever held accountable by their own department or from the county district attorney. And that does not even account for the countless number of our people in our community that are searched and frisked and batoned and assaulted and have dogs sicked upon them every day. And so holding police officers accountable for when they misbehave and when they violate the human rights of people in our community. So yeah, my action item is just keep putting the pressure on. When the street's empty, the email inboxes need to fill up.
I'll try to be brief because I think Sajid and Raj have said it really well. I do want to clarify one point. We do not file charges against juveniles as adults in San Francisco. I have a policy of never doing that. So to the direct file question, that's not, and there are difficult cases. I'll be honest, there are some difficult cases, but fundamentally, kids are kids. And so that's, I don't care what someone has done as a kid. We have to believe, if we are human beings, if we are committed to humanistic values, if we are going to live our lives and move forward and put one foot in front of the other every day, we have to believe that a child is capable of redemption, is capable of transformation, is capable of growth, and is more than their worst mistake. If we don't believe that, then we as a human race have way bigger problems. So I do believe that. I am an optimist. I believe in people. I believe in redemption. I've seen my parents change. My mom did 22 years in prison. My father's done nearly 40 years in prison. And I know that they are not the same people who participated in a serious crime. I know that no matter how many more years my father spends in prison, I know that even if he gets COVID in that prison cell, the man in the cell next to him already did. It's not going to bring back the men who lost their lives in their case. No amount of suffering will bring those men back. But my parents are not a threat to society, and so many other people in our prisons and our jails are not a threat. According to the California Department of Corrections, nearly half of all of the people housed, more than 100,000 people housed in California prisons, are low risk. Low risk. What are we doing spending $81,000 a year to incarcerate, to warehouse human beings who are low risk when we don't even have housing or education or healthcare for people on the streets? Where are our priorities? Look at the system. Look at how it's dehumanizing. Look at how it's bankrupting local governments. Look at how it is oppressing people who need a hand up, not a kick in the chin. And we need to reorient our resources and our values. And we have a really unique moment right now. We may never see another moment like this in our lifetimes, where there is as much public awareness, a national broad consensus across the political party spectrum that we have to approach public safety and our criminal legal system in a different way, in a more human way, in a more effective way, in a more efficient way. We may not get this moment again. So stay active, stay engaged. Action items, you've already heard a few. If you really have nothing better to do, if you can't find anything else, if you're looking for things to do, let me just tell you, the work that Raj and his team at Silicon Valley Debug do is critical work. It is essential work. Re-entry and the kind of work that they're doing in the community to ensure that people who are released from custody do not get rearrested is absolutely essential. There's no more important work. I'm going to tell you why. You can elect somebody like me in Santa Clara County and LA County. And I don't care what office it is. If we don't have people in the community doing the work to support folks coming home, then we know what's going to happen. Prisons don't work. Jails don't work. There's no doubt about that. But until we have folks like Silicon Valley Debug stepping up to build alternatives and to ensure that reentry is successful and is safe, people are going to govern through fear. They're going to be scared of what might happen when someone gets released. And the reality is, we do not, as a society, give people who are coming home from custody a chance to succeed. We let them out on the streets at 10 p.m. with nothing but a jail bracelet, with no identification, with no food, with nowhere to sleep. Homeless shelters are closed. They can't get jobs. So we need folks to do the work to ensure those transitions are successful. And the more they're successful, the more Raj and his team, Young Women's Freedom Center in San Francisco, the more that those folks are successful, the more they have your support in the community at being successful, the more people we can safely let out. The more we can move towards that society where we're investing in schools and in education and where we're investing in healthcare for all rather than building more cages to put human beings in. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, all of you. Thank you so much. I mean, you guys have given us a lot this evening, and I know we've taken up more of your time than we had asked, but we really appreciate you guys being here. Very valuable stuff. We will have the recording available for folks. They need to go back and view this again or would like to share it. But just thank you guys again for spending your evening with us. And thank you to all the speakers that participated this evening and all the organizations that helped to make these things happen. Thank you to Debug. Thank you to San Jose Strong. Thank you to all you guys. And if anyone has any last words, Helen or Mary?
Just thank you so much. It's been amazing to hear your insights and what we can do to move our community here to a better future, and also everyone get involved in SV Debug. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Nietzsche,
Raj, safe travels.
Thanks,
yeah,
bro.
safe travel.
Thanks, bro. Take care.
Nietzsche, if you're still on and you want to wrap up before everyone heads out.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight in our virtual space. And I want to continue to invite people to follow us on our social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, and reach out to us if you would like to become a member or donate. Thank you very much and have a good night.
And lastly, we do have an event next Tuesday if folks are interested. I'll put the information here. I'll just leave that up for a little bit. It's next Tuesday, 5 p.m. to interview with Senator Nancy Skinner. She's one of the authors of the bill they were talking about, SB 1421. She's introducing another bill, SB 776. So this will be a good discussion, just more of a one-on-one. So please join us. We'll have more details to come. And thank you guys again for all being a part of this great event this evening. And that's all. So thank you, everyone.
We'll probably be having another quarterly meeting in another 3 months. So watch for the invite.
All right. Well, have a good night. Stay safe. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Helen and Mary. Good night, you guys.